Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Come on, everyone, together. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome devotees to our morning Bhagavatam class. This morning we will be discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 9, verse 38, and the chapter is entitled The Passing of Bhishma Dev in the Presence of Lord Krishna. And the class will be given by Her Grace Vrindaneswari Radhika from ISKCON, Philadelphia. Hare Krishna Prabhu. Accept my obeisances. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.
Mine, all glories to Prabhupada. Welcome everyone. Good morning. Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giravardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giravardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giravardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Asatari Sata His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Asatari Sata His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prem Sigaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadara Shiva Sati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakan Radhakan Gita Govardhan Ki Jai. Mayapurdam Ki Jai, Vrindavandam Ki Jai, Jamuna Devi Ki Jai, Ganga Devi Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai, ISKCON Harrisburg Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Bol. All glories, ye assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories, ye assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories, ye assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga, Hari Hari Bol. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravana Pacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatate Shatarane. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskrita Naram Chaiva Narottama Devam Sarasvatim Vashyam Tato Dayam Udirayat Nastaprayasya Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloki Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Good morning, everyone. So let's read the verse. I'll read it 3 times, and then we can read it together. Sita Vishika Hatu Vishrina Damsha Kataja Paripluta Atata Yinome Prashaba Mahisha Sharamadvadartham Sabhavotame Bhagavan Gatir Mukunda Sita Visika Hato Vishrina Damsa Shataja Paripluta Atata Yinome Pashabam Ahisha Sharamadvadhartam Sabhavuta me Bhagavan Gatir Mukunda Sita Vikshika Hatu Vrishirina Damsa Shataja Paripluta Tanino me Pashabam Ahisha Sharamadvadhartam Sabhavatu me Bhagavan Gatir Mukunda. Anyone else?
Mother Geeta, I don't know if she's okay. Bobby Parikshit can go. I don't know where she's at.
Shita Vishita Hato Vishinadam Sa Shataja Paripluta Tata Yinome Shavam Abhika Sharamadvata Vadhatam Sabhamatume Bhagavan Gati Mukunda. Hare Krishna.
Sita Vishika Hato Vishnadamscha Sada Shataja Pravli Pluta Atata Yinome Prashabhama Bisha Sharamadvadardam Sabhavatu me Bhagavan Gatir Mukunda.
Anyone else? Like to give it a shot?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Shita Vishika Hato Vishirna Damsaha Shataja Paripluta Atatayino Me Prasavam abhisasara madvartam sabhavatu me bhagavan gatir mukunda.
Great. All right. So we'll do word for word. Sita, sharp. Visika, arrows. Hata, wounded by. Vishirna, damsa, scattered shield. Shataja, by wounds. Paripluta, smeared with blood. Atatanya, the great aggressor. My. Prashabam, in an angry mood. Abhishashara, began to move on. Matvada artham, for the purpose of killing me. Sa, he. Bhavatu, may become. Me, my. Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Gatiya, destination. Mukunda, who awards salvation. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. May He, Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who awards salvation, be my ultimate destination. On the battlefield, he charged me as if angry because of the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows. His shield was scattered, and his body was smeared with blood due to the wounds. Purport. The dealings of Lord Krishna and Bhishma Dev on the battlefield of Kurukshetra are interesting because the activities of Lord Shri Krishna appeared to be partial to Arjuna and at enmity with Bhishma Dev. But factually, all this was especially meant to show special favor to Bhishma Dev, a great devotee of the Lord. The astounding feature of such dealings is that a devotee can please the Lord by playing the part of an enemy. The Lord, being absolute, can accept service from his pure devotee, even in the garb of an enemy. The Supreme Lord cannot have any enemy, nor can a so-called enemy harm him because he is ajita, or unconquerable. But still he takes pleasure when his pure devotees beats him like an enemy or rebukes him from a superior position, although no one can be superior to the Lord. These are some of the transcendental reciprocatory dealings of the devotee with the Lord, and those who have no information of pure devotional service cannot penetrate into the mystery of such dealings. Bhishma Dev played the part of a valiant warrior, and he purposefully pierced the body of the Lord so that to the common eye it appeared that the Lord was wounded. But factually, all this was to bewilder the non-devotees. The all-spiritual body cannot be wounded, and a devotee cannot become the enemy of the Lord. Had it been so, Bhishma Dev would not have desired to have the very same Lord as the ultimate destination of his life. Had Bhishma Dev been an enemy of the Lord, Lord Krishna could have annihilated him without even moving. There was no need to come before Bhishma Dev with blood and wounds. But he also did because the pleasure of the warrior devotee wanted to see the transcendental beauty of the Lord decorated with wounds created by a pure devotee. This is the way of exchanging transcendental rasa, or relations between the Lord and the servitor. By such dealings, both the Lord and the devotee become glorified in their respective positions. The Lord was so angry that Arjuna checked him when he was moving toward Bhishma Dev, but in spite, the Lord was so angry with Arjuna that Arjuna checked him when he was moving toward Bhishma Dev. But in spite of Arjuna's checking, he proceeded toward Bhishma Dev as a lover goes to a lover without caring for hindrances. Apparently, his determination was to kill Bhishma Dev, but factually, it was to please him as a great devotee of the Lord. The Lord is undoubtedly the deliverer of all conditioned souls. The impersonalists desire salvation from him, and he always awards them according to their aspiration. But here, Bhishma Dev aspires to see the Lord in his personal feature. All pure devotees aspire for this. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadara Shri Vasati Gaura Bhaktivinda Vanchakalpa Tarubhisha Kripa Sindhu Vayevi Chapatitanam Bhavani Theo Vaishnavi Namo Namaha. So I'll read the translation again. May he, Lord Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who awards salvation, be my ultimate destination. On the battlefield, he charged me as if angry because of the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows. His shield was scattered and his body was smeared with blood due to the wounds. So here we're seeing more evidence of the position of Bhishma Dev, and seeing how he is truly a pure devotee of the Lord, even though he's coming against Krishna seemingly on the battlefield. But we've seen, we're early on in the Bhagavatam, and I can say those who have studied the Bhagavatam in the past know that this is how sometimes Krishna will enact these pastimes with his devotees, is that they can be on the other side of him. And we will see going forward that this can come up periodically in Krishna's pastimes with and dealings with his devotees, is that they, even taking on the side of an enemy as a devotee, can be a great honor for the devotee, and it gives pleasure to Krishna too, to see these pastimes enacted by the devotee. It shows true love and devotion. I mean, imagine that you love someone so much that you'd be willing to take on this opposing role just for their pleasure. And that could be, that's a very difficult thing to enact. So that requires a great deal of trust, faith, shraddha, but also a deep, deep loving relationship with the Lord, because most of us probably wouldn't want to be on the other side of the battlefield of Krishna. I know, I'm not sure I would. But this is the role that Bhishma Dev has taken, and he's taking it willingly, and he's known to be a great devotee, and he's setting this example. He's giving instruction to King Yudhisthira on the battlefield, instructing him how to be a great leader, how to surrender to the Lord. So he's providing this incredible example, and even in his last breaths, he's saying these prayers to the Lord, and even saying, even I may have in my life been, attracted to material, material things, but yet please bring me back to you at my time of death. Please bring me back to remembering you, O Lord. You are my ultimate salvation. This is, and we can see that when the Lord does show up and present himself as he is here in his personal form, that this is the ultimate salvation and mercy for the devotee. And so here, because Bhishma Dev desired it, Krishna allowed it. Krishna came to him, and as Prabhupada used the words, like two lovers running toward each other, because this was the deep bond that's hard to understand. That can be very difficult to understand. And this is the very high. This is Bhava. This is Prema Bhakti. This is the very highest of devotional service, because this is truly at the end of his life. He is just so much desiring to see Krishna that Krishna actually appears. He appears to him in his two-armed form, in his personal form, giving him all of that mercy, and giving him all of that, the opportunity to merge. And we know later on, as he's merging into, in super soul to never come back. So this is a very high, very elevated topic. And really what we're discussing here, it's not an ordinary death. It's not an ordinary battle. We started a conversations in Bhagavad Gita through the Bhakti Garden every Saturday morning at 7 a.m. If anyone wants to join, let me know. It's a Zoom, 7 to 8 a.m. It's called Conversations in Bhakti and Conversations in Bhagavad Gita. And we were discussing this battle and the transcendental nature of that. Obviously, there was, King Dhritarashtra was very, he was blind, or he was very not a good person, and he brought a lot of evil onto the land, and so there was that component. But Bhishma was fighting on that side. How did that happen? How is it that so many of these devotees of the Lord and so many friends and relatives of Arjuna were on the opposing side, right? There's a lot of having to do with alliances and loyalties, and also this is partly what Krishna is enacting, because all of these devotees that have appeared on the other side of the battlefield, they are getting the highest levels of mercy because they're getting killed by Krishna. So this is a very elevated, like I said, this is a very elevated conversation. It's a very elevated topic, because we're talking about this very, very high level of mercy that Krishna is providing to his devotees. And anyone that is on the opposing side, even those that were fallen, that had, that brought evil upon the kingdom, they were even still receiving so much mercy by being killed by Krishna. Because as we know, when Krishna says, they've all already been killed by me. When Arjuna is looking at the universal form in Bhagavad Gita, and he's seeing the death and the jaws and the ripping and tearing and dying, and and Krishna's proving, like, they're already dead. I've already killed them. You're just an instrument, and they're dead, and I've already killed them, and they're getting my mercy. Right? This is an auspicious way to die. If we can die by the sword of Krishna, or die by the teeth or claws of Krishna, that is the ultimate way to die. And we get the highest levels of mercy as a result of that. And even when Krishna kills demons, you can see in Bhagavatam, when he's taking out demons, there was examples in Bhagavatam where it says, and they merged with Super Soul, or they merged with with Bhagavan. And so we know, we think about merging, and merging is kind of a concept that gets a little confusing in our path, because we always say we're not merging, we're going back home to Godhead, and that's that's a different experience. And I actually asked my Guru Maharaj this many years ago in class, and because he had read a portion of Bhagavatam where it said that Krishna killed, I'm trying to remember which demon it was that he had killed, but had merged with the absolute. And I was like, I'm like, hey, I thought we weren't supposed to merge. I thought that wasn't a good thing. Like, tell me, explain this to me. And my Guru Maharaj had said to me that, and factually speaking, that this is a very elevated way, so they're merging with the absolute, that is becoming one with that energy. But that is one of the ways to receive salvation. So we'll see this coming up, that he's merging into super soul. So, this might be a topic for a future class by someone more elevated than me to speak to it, because I'm talking about this verse, but I'm giving a little bit of a highlight going forward. But the point is that, but when Krishna takes out an enemy, or when a devotee is killed by Krishna, it is the ultimate. It is the ultimate way to leave one's body, because they are receiving all of that mercy from the Lord, and they will receive a very elevated position, and usually going back to Godhead or something along those lines. So this is explained all in Srimad Bhagavatam, how we understand this. So here it's saying that this is the bhava, this is the rasa, this exchanging this transcendental rasa. Right. And so we know about the different rasas, the servitor, the parent, the friends, the lover. So the serving in neutrality. So these are the different rasas that it can exist. And when Prabhupada says it's like two lovers running toward each other, right? We can see that as that's a very elevated rasa. That's Madhurya Leela, right? That's elevated. And when we think about the 9 processes, or the 9 stages of bhakti, Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti, this is Bhava is just slightly below Prema, but Prema Bhakti is really completely absorbed in devotional life, and absorbed in the thoughts of Krishna. And here is Bhishma Dev laying on this bed of arrows, surrounded by the enemy, surrounded by who he was fighting against on the battlefield. And here he is only just glorifying the Lord. And he's only just giving Yudhisthira instructions to be able to give him what he needs in order to run the kingdom successfully in a Krishna conscious way. And so, the stages of bhakti are here demonstrated at this highest level, but it also, it also takes some faith too, right? That as we are reading this, faith as the reader looking into this scenario, right? And it took faith from Arjuna too, because Krishna was telling Arjuna, no, this is what you need to do. And Arjuna's fighting back, saying, well, wait, hold on. If I kill if I kill the families, then it'll bring doom onto the kingdom. It'll bring pollution, of the women and unwanted progeny, and all the ancestors will suffer, and for generations forward, this will bring bad things onto the kingdom. And Krishna's like, no, actually, this is what, just trust me. Essentially, it's really kind of, no, this is, you can do this. Yes, you can drop your Gandiva bow and walk away and say, I will not fight because of these reasons, for compassion, for a higher good, and because of also some fear. You can not fight for all of those reasons, but you have a duty. And Krishna's ultimately saying, I've already orchestrated this. It's done, right? So you just need to carry out the activity, because it's already been orchestrated. It's already taken care of. And that is a great degree of faith that Arjuna had to demonstrate in order to move forward and to begin this battle. So, when we think about the difference of, what we as individuals here in this world can understand from this, there's a verse in Bhagavad Gita, which is probably has been talked about in other classes as well, as the Janma Karma Chame Devyam Evam Yo Veti Tatataha Tuakya Teham Punar Janma Natimam Eti Sojourna. So this verse is saying, one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in the material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. And this verse, I think, very much relates to this verse that we're reading in Bhagavatam today, because it's telling us that one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not take birth. He attains my eternal abode. And we can see Bhishma, Grandfather Bhishma, demonstrating this. Okay. He's demonstrating this by his actions, his activities, and by the willingness to go up again in battle against Krishna, knowing what he's up against. And so, so we can understand that this is this person that knows the transcendental nature of Krishna. It's not knowing it just intellectually or saying, I read it in Bhagavad Gita, therefore I know it, right? There's a difference. We can say, I read it in Bhagavad Gita, therefore I know it. But to know it is to know it truly, to know it and to live it and to understand it in one's heart. And this is the knowledge. Knowledge isn't just this peripheral understanding or this surface understanding of something. It's really imbibing it. It's bringing it into our daily living and behaving in such a way that knowledge is carried out in our day-to-day life. So here it's Prabhupada talks about in this purport, it says, one who can understand the truth of the appearance of the personality of Godhead is already liberated from material bondage, and therefore he returns to the kingdom of God immediately after quitting his material body. So, and he says, such liberation of the living entity from material bondage is not at all easy. Prabhupada's even saying it. He's like, it's not easy, right? So we can read it in Bhagavad Gita and say, like, yeah, I remember reading that verse somewhere, and that resonates. Sure, that resonates with me. But why is this such a difficult thing? And Prabhupada tells us right here, because we need to be free from material bondage. And that's key. And so, Grandfather Bhishma tells us this as well. He's saying in a verse earlier, he said, I've been tied up in so many material activities. Please let me now remember the Lord, But he must have been pretty good devotee anyway, because, he may say he's tied up in material activities, but in reality, for Krishna to come on a bed of arrows and to be fighting Krishna in such a way, he's pretty elevated, right? But us here, not being on the battle of Kurukshetra and not facing Krishna in person, for us and to look at the material energies and look at the material shackles that we may feel in day-to-day life, that's more of a challenge. That is definitely more of a challenge for us. And Prabhupada says that in this purport that it's not at all easy, right? And he says here, the impersonalists and the yogis attain liberation only after much trouble and many, many births. Even then, the liberation they achieve, merging into the impersonal Brahmajyoti of the Lord, is only partial, and there's a risk of returning to this material world, right? So even the yogis that are spending all of their time in meditation, right? We know that Patanjali is the yoga ladder, right? Controlling the breath, controlling the mind, controlling, sitting in posture. These are all things that kind of can elevate one up to that stage of samadhi. And even still, if one takes all of those austerities and goes through the yoga sutras, the Patanjali, the yoga ladder, one takes all of that to heart and really practices it deeply. Even still, if one goes through all of those stages and finds samadhi, they still might come back. Why? Why is that? Well, this is what we know as bhakti yogis, right? We're all bhakti yogis, is that we know that because they have not focused their attention on devotional service. They have only taken the austerities aspect of meditation and of spiritual life. They've taken the austerities component and taken that to a very high level. And many of them achieve yoga siddhis. Yoga siddhis are mystic powers, right? Some of them even achieve these high levels of mystic powers. But what is that all for? Is there a devotional desire there? Is there a devotional relationship with the Lord there, right? And that is the principle that is really drawn out here, because here Bhishma Dev has not done all, he's not sitting, just meditating under a tree for thousands of years. We see this in Hiranyakashipu, right? This is an example. Hiranyakashipu, he does all these austerities and the meditations and all these things to attain these very elevated powers. And then he asked Lord Brahma for all these boons to not be killed. But ultimately, in the end, he didn't have the devotion. And Prahlad, his son, his devotional son, was like, well, Father, actually, all of these things, really, life is about understanding Vishnu. Life is about understanding the Lord. So that's all that matters in our passing of our lives. So Hiranyakashipu then was, when he was killed by the Lord, still that was a boon, right? When Nrsingadev came and destroyed him, he was still carrying out that mercy on Hiranyakashipu. But the point is that even doing all of those strong austerities, still, it's still only he still could be killed, right? He couldn't defeat the Lord. And because he was going at it in a way to try and defeat the Lord, and he couldn't. But when we go about our lives in a way that's trying to serve the Lord, when we go about our lives in a way that is conducting austerities in the mode of goodness, right? There's austerities in the mode of goodness. There's austerities in the mode of ignorance and the mode of passion. And when we're conducting these austerities in the mode of goodness, which means it's only for the pleasure of the Lord, that there's not some sort of internal benefit. There's not some sort of internal drive that we have for these austerities, that we're doing it purely because we know that this will please the Lord in some way, right? And so this is really for for our understanding. So going back to that Bhagavad Gita verse. So Prabhupada says that there are many transcendental forms of the Lord, and they are still one and the same Supreme Personality of Godhead. One has to understand this fact with conviction, although it is incomprehensible to mundane scholars and empiric philosophers. So that means that we have to have pure conviction that there is only one and the same Supreme Personality of Godhead, even though there are many transcendental forms. And that's something that can take some time, may take lifetimes to come to that platform, to come to that realization. And like I said, in our daily practice, how are we how are we carrying these out? Well, we have our sadhana. We have these things that can help bring us to through the stages of bhakti. And the beginning part, and I've talked about this in the past, the beginning part is faith. So we have to establish some sort of faith, and then associating with other devotees, sadhu sangha. And it's interesting. We were so my husband and I are in a more of a Western style kirtan band. It's a lot of fun, and we do yoga studio kirtans a couple times a month in the evenings. And we had one in a yoga studio in South Philly on Saturday, and one of the kirtaniyas that's in this kirtan band with us received a text message from someone that had attended the kirtan, and she said, "Thank you so much for this kirtan." She said, "I didn't realize I had been drifting. I'd been drifting away, and this pulled me back in." And this morning, when I was thinking about that message, and I was thinking, it's really, without that sadhu sangha, without people in our lives that are on the same path, it doesn't have to be exact, right? But people that are have the same leanings, the same desires to be spiritual and to pursue spiritual activities. Without that influence in our lives, it can become very bewildering very fast. And this is the sadhu sangha component. So, and I was very pleased to see that someone was kind of touched and reminded of her relationship with Krishna as a result of that kirtan. So it's kind of like, don't underestimate the power of kirtan. It's very potent. But the sadhu sangha is something that is really, really critical. And then the next level is Bhajana Kriya, which is we're performing devotional service. We're performing devotional service. We're hopefully maybe at this point taking on a guru, a spiritual master, to help guide us in our devotional activities. And this Bhajana Kriya stage is really where we're starting to get more fixed up. They say fixed up, but we're starting to get more engaged, and our desires are increasing. This is where we start to see our desires for spiritual life start to increase a little bit, and our desires for material life might start to come down a little bit. And that brings us to the anartha nivritti stage, which is where we're starting to get rid of some of these unwanted attachments, things that are pulling us down. These are kind of the weeds that we have to sort through that are keeping us from devotional activities. And then nishta is really being very steady, coming to that steady level where it's like, without fail, we know that the activities we want to do in our life are spiritual, and we want to pursue that constantly. And we have that taste, which is ruchi. The ruchi is getting that taste, that higher taste. We have this book, which is a cookbook called The Higher Taste, but that's really the higher taste is understanding that what is in this material world is just not satisfying. It's not quenching my thirst. It's not satiating me, that there's something more. And I was giving a bhakti yoga class at a yoga studio a couple of weeks ago, and this girl had come and it was her first time there. And I said, "Oh, what brought you here?" She's like, I just felt like there was something more that I was missing. And I saw this and I felt I had to come. And I think that everyone might feel that eventually if they really tune in, because when we are fully engaged in material activities, we might feel like, gosh, I'm always hungry. I'm always thirsty. And I don't mean feeding with water and a nice meal. I'm talking about like that hunger and thirst that just is thinking, I'm doing these things in material life, and yeah, they can make me happy for a little bit, but somehow it's just not quite it. Just not quite it. And I think a majority of people out there might share this sentiment if they really thought about it, and not putting it to them in a judgmental way, saying like, you're in material activities and you're in Maya, but it's more about saying like, well, life brings ups and downs, right? Yes, that's true. Okay, so life brings ups and downs. We're suffering sometimes, we're happy sometimes. It's right, can be kind of fleeting sometimes. And sometimes doesn't it feel like sometimes we might just get something and then that satisfies us for a little bit, but then it's just we want more, and then that satisfies us for a little bit, and then we want some more. Doesn't it feel like that sometimes in life, where we're just kind of like not always satisfied with where we're at? We're just trying to get more, whatever it is, more money, have more free time, or more this or more that, or more people in our lives. And when we start thinking about that, and when we ask ourselves, or maybe propose this to other people, they might start to think inside, like, that resonates. Like, I feel that. And that's kind of the opening to say, well, that's our nature, to want to have something higher, that higher taste, that ruchi. It's our nature. It's our inherent nature as a spirit soul to seek something higher. It's just that the material energies are so strong. The material energies are always guiding us. They're always pulling us around, right? Material energies are so strong. They're so powerful that they can cover over that little inkling that we have, because we are caught up. And I'm, guilty as charged. Like, I know, and sometimes in my day, I am just so thoroughly spun out and caught up in my to-do list and taking phone calls and meetings and appointments, patients, that, I don't even have time to really think some days. I'm like, and, this is how material energies can really absorb us. They really absorb us. And this is why it can be difficult. This is why Prabhupada said that coming to this platform, coming to this realization is not easy, because of the material bondage. Because liberation of the living entity from material bondage is difficult. It's difficult because of the potency of the energies, and we're here in this material body. So reading things like the Srimad Bhagavatam and seeing these wonderful examples of Bhishma Dev, and we see even the example of Hiranyakashipu, we see the example of Prahlad, we see the example of Maharaj Parikshit and Maharaj Ambarish, and there's just, the list goes on. The list goes on of all the people in Bhagavatam, and these examples, whether they are examples of excess on one side, or they are showing examples of pure devotees. We can see how these personalities have dealt in the relationships with the Lord, and it gives us kind of something to ponder, right? And that's what I love about Bhagavatam. It gives us something to ponder in our day, if we so desire, And the verse that comes after the Janma Karma Chame Divyam verse is the next one, is being freed from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me. Many persons in the past become purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. And so, and Prabhupada says in the purport, generally, people who are attached to the bodily conception of life are so absorbed in materialism that it is impossible for them to understand how the Supreme can be a person. Such materialists cannot even imagine that there is a transcendental body which is imperishable, full of knowledge, and eternally blissful, Satchidananda Vigraha, right? So this is that's that ultimate. And so in our stages, in our path of bhakti, as we're moving through these stages, and they may not be linear, right? I don't believe that anything in life is truly a linear process. We may be dancing around, a little bit, but ultimately we need faith to move forward, and we need some sadhu sangha. Is pretty darn important to get ourselves going, right? And then we might find some days that just were, the attachments are kind of falling away a little bit. And I find, I was talking to another devotee recently about a newer person that was coming in, and that person was struggling with just some things like quitting smoking, becoming vegetarian, some things that some of us may consider kind of basic, but for this person, those are challenges. We were kind of having a quick discussion about ways to kind of tackle some of these difficulties that can occur in the early stages of devotional life. And one of the things that kind of came to the table is, well, depending on who we are, we can just say cold turkey, like I just know that this is wrong. I know that this path of devotional service is right, and I am done. Wash my hands, I'm done with it. And then there's others who, have this inkling, have this sense about devotional life, but are still, the bodily pangs and pulls are still very much there. And so, and it might not be for, any one of us, it might not be smoking or drinking or eating meat. It might be more subtle, right? Because it's easy to say, oh, you smoke, you eat meat, you drink. Oh, those are clearly bad. Just get rid of them, right? But when we have more subtle things, like maybe it's prajalpa, right? We just have this mundane talk, or maybe it's blaspheming devotees. Maybe it's talking badly about people that we don't realize. Maybe it's just these kind of little things that can creep in to our day. And these are also things that are going to hinder us in our devotional life. So we want to be, I encourage all of us, and I'm constantly encouraging myself, at least, to be, compassionate toward those that say, I'm having trouble stopping eating meat or drinking or smoking, because while those may seem like gross in the sense of our spiritual activities, like these gross kind of, no-nos, we'll call them, the subtle ones, I think, can be even more insidious, and they can creep in and steer us in wrong directions spiritually, just as much, if not more, because they're kind of coming in a little bit from the back door, right? And so that the answer that I would give to someone that comes to me, and this person actually came to me several months ago and told me that he was having difficulty with smoking and stopping eating meat, and I said to him, that's difficult, because you might be using those things, especially smoking, as a crutch for some sort of material difficulties that you're having. I said, but the key is that when you start in the devotional activities, when you start putting your heart in alignment with desire for spiritual activities, desire for a relationship with Krishna, over time, those things will start to improve. And the same can go for those more subtle things that pop in too. So the more that we develop ourselves in devotional activities, the more that we take on the guidance of a spiritual master, and these anartha nivrittis, these unwanted attachments, start to fall away. They start to just kind of fall away. And when they fall away, naturally, they tend to stay away. And they tend not to haunt us from behind, like gnawing at us, like nipping at our ankles, because they fall away in a very organic way through that process of deep love of God. And so quitting all these things is important, right? So those of us who make a choice to get initiated and take on this next step, that's important. The 4 regulative principles are imperative for our progressing in our spiritual lives, right? But for someone who's not there yet, and they want to get there, to tell them cold turkey, like, absolutely not, cut it out, forget it, you're never going to get anywhere, that's not going to get them very far either. And I've seen people bounce right back out the door because they've been told that. And so how do we balance those conversations? How do we deal with the people that are coming in off the streets that still have these bad habits, which I have plenty of my own bad habits that are hindrances to my spiritual life. They might just not be as observable, to the naked eye, but but how do we deal with those situations? And I bring it back to kind of being compassionate, and also really, if we truly engage in devotional activities the way Prabhupada had laid it out for us, then these things will fall away organically, and then it will create less strife. It will create less of an issue for us, less, like I said, less nipping at our heels later on. So this is kind of the take it slow. The race is not for the swift. This is a process that we've taken lifetimes to come to. The fact that we're even here, it could have taken us how many lifetimes just to get here, being able to sit in Bhagavatam and hear it and want to hear it, right? And so that could have taken gobs of lifetimes just for this process to unfold. So it's a process of being patient with ourselves and in our devotional life. And I always like to speak to kind of how we communicate to the outside world, because to me that's a huge component, because oftentimes we may find ourselves in conversations, and I know personally, like, I accidentally offended someone and he almost didn't come back. This was years ago. And I felt horrible. And when I realized what I had done, I immediately went to him and apologized profusely. And he accepted the apology, thankfully. And he did say, yes, you very much offended me. And I was like, I'm so sorry. But I had told him, I said, he was new and he'd been coming for maybe a year. And I said, oh, are you chanting? He's like, yes, I'm very much enjoying chanting. And I said, are you chanting on beads? And he said, no, not yet. I'm really just enjoying chanting in my mind. And I said, well, you should be chanting on beads. It's required that chant on beads, something to that effect. And I was like, we really want to try and always chant on beads. That's the best way. And I was just thinking I was giving him a little bit of guidance, but I was coming off for him a little hard. And I was saying, you should do this. And I was dictating his spiritual life for him. And I felt really bad. And after that, I really learned a very valuable lesson in how I handle, interactions like that. And it was a good lesson for me. But in our process of speaking to the world around us, it is important to, kind of read the room. As I always say, read the room, make sure you know who you're talking to and how they're going to receive it. It's not that we're changing Prabhupada's message at all. That's not the goal. The goal is to make sure that they understand, that we understand how they're going to receive what we're saying. And because in one sentence, someone can just leave. One sentence can pose the wrong way, or too strongly can just pop someone right back out the door. And that's sad. That's loss. That's a major loss for them, for Krishna, for the movements. It's just a loss in general. And so anyway, I didn't mean to get kind of like, it just kind of flowed into this conversation, and I kind of just went with it. But I do welcome any conversation, questions, comments, anything that we'd like to share at this point.
Thank you so much, Vrindaneswari. And I completely agree with you how we really handle new people, new devotees, because I think what I have also observed over the years is because we value Krishna consciousness, because we know it works, right? And because we love it, we are in it, we whatever it can be. And when we meet someone new, we think, what's your problem, man? And then we tend to go headstrong, not knowing. And what has helped me, and I always have to remind myself, where was I 30 years ago and what was my journey like?
So
and because sometimes we forget that we also had our attachments and challenges. And we had the mercy of our seniors, of our spiritual master, to beat us on our head, and correct us and patiently tolerate us, even though they may not understand. So that is always a reminder for me, how to really, for me to be more patient.
yeah.
I think that's the key point. So thank you for reminding us that we need to develop patience and tolerance, because if we look back, at least for me, when I look back in my early years, my seniors and my spiritual master was very, very patient. I mean, I needed constant, help, rectification. So thank you for bringing that up. Yes.
Yeah, mine too. I mean, my Guru Maharaj was utterly patient with me, and I would always joke, I'm like, here I am, this American girl coming in, because most of his disciples, most of them are Indian bodied, and I was like this bumbling American girl coming in, making every accidental offense on the books, and I was just like, clueless, and he was just so merciful to me. And I remember sending an email to him once, and I was just like, oops, I think that wasn't proper format to the email. He's like, it's okay. He's like, I will understand you no matter what. And I was like, that's amazing. I didn't do it again. I appreciated his mercy with that, but yeah, I mean, it's really fundamental that that people coming in are met with compassion and love and friendship
Yeah.
first.
Such an important point.
Yeah.
Such an important point.
Yeah. So, and kind of going back to today's lecture, really understanding that all of these things, Prabhupada's talking in this purport about the very highest level of devotional life, and we can see that example here with Bhishma. But the stage is to get to that. So it's not unattainable. We just have to understand we have to have the map.
That's the word, the roadmap, because I think sometimes, and this was my question, and probably a point for discussion. Sometimes I feel that there is a roadmap, and the roadmap is not straight, nor is it smooth.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty bumpy, thorny roadmap, because and I've heard Srila Prabhupada say in one of many lectures that Krishna is not cheap.
Right.
Because if it is, then you would take him for granted. It's like giving him a laundry list. But what I have noticed is over the years is sometimes, as when you are giving the class, and you're sharing the sweet relationship between Lord Krishna and Bhishma, they have their ras, right? Prabhupada says it's a transcendental ras. And sometimes we see devotees trying to mimic that. How can we avoid that? Because sometimes we think, I'm in this euphoria thing, and I've experienced that, and I feel it's dangerous. But how can we avoid that, Prabhu?
It's not easy. I think that the more I think that elation on this path is natural, especially early on, because when one comes in contact with the spiritual energies of the Lord through the mantra and through the devotees, one can easily become elated. And I think that's a sign that they've come in contact with some, some energies they're not used to. they're not material energies, that these are spiritual energies they're coming in contact with, and it's new, and it feels very exciting. I think over time, as that's tempered, and evens out, that it becomes more of an internal experience. And so I don't know that it's about avoiding imitation, because I think that's a natural part. It's just how children imitate their parents. They're less effective. You can see it, you see a child on their little play cell phone, and they're like talking la 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 la, like babbling along in their cell phone. They're imitating their parents. Are they actually effectively making a phone call and having a conversation? No, they're just imitating their parents, right? So when we are imitating elevated devotees, it can be, in some sense, dangerous, because we have to be careful about our false ego getting too spun up in it. But at the same time, it's also that it's that natural process of growth and childhood, right? And if we kind of look at our devotional, stage, I guess, or maturity, or however you want to put it, if we see as like this growth process, so we have the physical body, which we see this aging. And we can put a year, designate, I'm this age, I'm a teenager, I'm middle-aged, I'm elderly. But in our spiritual progress, it's harder to delineate where we might fall in that aging or that maturing process. And so I think it's very natural for the imitation to occur. It's that as long as hopefully it does not create problems for others, This is the first thing. If it creates problems for others, then it needs to be brought to someone's attention. If it is somehow damaging the movements, damaging Prabhupada, but in hopefully over time that person, through that mimicry and through that imitation, is, if they're sincere, that they will grow out of it and find their own way to their path of expression of spiritual life, and that the imitation will slowly become more sincere, that it's not imitation, that it's actually something that's embodied, and then it becomes less external, right?
And like you said, in the presence of guidance, because at least what I have noticed, imitation, it actually mislead others, especially the newcomers.
Exactly.
That has been so dangerous. I've seen that, following the foot, and I think that's the key word, following in the footsteps and imitating. I think it's the difference here, because with guidance, because you like you mentioned, as long as it's not hindering or causing problems to Prabhupada's movement, and not deterring from Prabhupada's teachings, and especially misleading, because I've seen that it has really misled people, thinking that, oh, it's okay to do that, but they're so innocent that they follow others, and then it's not what Prabhupada said.
No. And then Prabhupada taught in the highest, he gave us the highest nectar. He gave us the goal, right? And he gave us steps to get to that goal. He didn't necessarily give us what it looks like between the bottom and the top. We kind of have to figure that out for ourselves. But he did give us the goal. And some people might just try and imitate the goal, the end result, the highest level, without truly being able to, like, I've seen people do that, where they're just like, they read that you shouldn't get more than 6 hours of sleep. Someone that was speaking with, we have had a strong discussion about it, because I was like, your health is compromised. This is not good for you. Like, why are you doing this? Well, Prabhupada said we shouldn't sleep more than 6 hours. I'm like, yeah, but that's impractical for your body. Why would you do that? You're hurting yourself. Well, Prabhupada said this. I'm like, well, let's read that verse. And we read it. And I was like, he was talking about pure devotional service. I was like, I'm certainly not engaging in pure devotional service. I need my 8 hours. I don't have that level of Shakti coming through me to be able to sustain 6 hours. Prabhupada did, and so we have to be intelligent. We have to use our intelligence in devotional life. Prabhupada never discouraged that. He always encouraged using our intelligence in devotional activities. And
that's the key word, using our intelligence, and receiving guidance. I think it's so important, and not misleading Prabhupada's words, like, really understanding what Prabhupada actually said. And if we don't get it, then we should take guidance from senior devotees.
That we trust. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because if not, we can definitely turn it into a khichdi from Prabhupada's teachings. Absolutely. Thank you. Any questions from devotees? Any comments? I know we passed the hour. Just don't want to ignore anybody, but are there questions, any comments, any reflection or thought to share? Yes, go ahead, Friction.
Hare Krishna. Except on humble obeisances, to the Prabhupada. That's just a comment that I want to make in the middle of your lecture, how you talked about devotees, the process from faith up to prema, and described it, the way you usually describe things was so nice. Then to sadhusanga, then Bhajana Kriya, on and on to the end. That's all I wanted to comment on. I very much liked how you handled that part. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Any other points or questions? Any clarification, comments? Okay, if there isn't, thank you so much, Prabhu, for such a wonderful, thoughtful class. Thank you to all the devotees for joining us. Vanchakapudibhyascha kripasindabevacha. Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Have a wonderful day, devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol.